My tripod is very broken right now, so I am very sorry if the camera angle is a little bit on its side. I've tried to fix it as best as I can, but we're just gonna have to deal with it. But hi guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm gonna be giving you my May wrap up. So May was a pretty good month for me in terms of reading, but it was also a very slow month. I didn't read as much as I have in previous months, and that is purely because of changes that have been happening in my life. You know, I started back at work 2 weeks ago, which was very overwhelming and just a lot all at once. And I also started some new medication for my mental health, which has obviously made me very tired and just a little bit all over the place. So reading didn't come as naturally as normally to me in May as it would have done previously, but I told myself that that didn't matter because, you know, I wanted to just focus on getting myself in a good place and just focusing on work and just taking it easy. Yeah, like it's been crazy at work. It's been nice to be back, but it has been a bit weird and a bit stressful. But you know, I'll get used to it again. And reading isn't the most important thing in the world. So yeah, I didn't force myself to read. I just read whenever I felt like it. I did hit a bit of a reading slump towards the end of May, but again, that was just because I was really tired from work. But having said that, even though I only read 6 books in May, the quality of the books that I was reading were absolutely outstanding because my average rating for the month of May was 4.43 stars, which is the highest it has ever been so far this year. My average rating is normally about 3.5 stars, so the fact that I got to 4.5 stars this month just goes to show that the quality of the books that I read was just phenomenal. And that's probably partly down to you guys because the books that I read in May were chosen by people on Instagram and Twitter. You might have chosen them if you follow me on those platforms. So you guys have a really good taste in books. There were a few books that I did choose myself as well, and some of my reading plans did change a little bit. But to carry on with the stats, so obviously I read 6 books. I read 2,565 pages, but I did have a DNF and I did start reading another book that I haven't finished yet. So I probably read a few more pages than that. But my longest book was These Violent Delights, and my shortest book was Reasons to Stay Alive. Male to female ratio, my male to female author ratio was a dead split. This time I had 50% male and 50% female authors, and I read 2 fantasy books, 2 non-fiction books, 1 thriller and 1 sci-fi, and yeah, I had 1 DNF. So as always, we're gonna start with the negatives, and we'll start with the book that I DNF'd, and I'm really sad about this, and I feel like I might get a little bit of hate because I know how well loved this book is. But unfortunately, I ended up DNFing If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I actually got quite far into this book. I got to page 299. This just wasn't what I hoped it would be, and it just wasn't really doing anything for me in the end. And I'm really surprised that I got as far into it as I did, because I knew from about the halfway point that this book wasn't for me, but I wanted to push through because I'd heard so many amazing things about it, and a few people that I'd spoken to has said that, you know, you have to get to the end for it to kind of pay off. So I really wanted to finish it, but it just got to the point where I was really bored and really frustrated with the whole book, and I just didn't want to force myself to finish something that I wasn't enjoying. I felt like I was wasting my time, so unfortunately I ended up putting it down. Like, this is a dark academia book, which is a genre that I'm not that familiar with. I've read a few dark academias in the past, and some have been good and some haven't been my thing, and this is definitely one of those that's not for me. The inclusion of Shakespeare I thought was pretty cool to start with, but then it just got really annoying because the characters just constantly quote Shakespeare, and I'm not a big Shakespeare fan, so that really grated on me, and I didn't really care for any of the characters. They just felt a little bit, I wouldn't say flat because the development was there, but I don't think the development was enough for me to care about them. And it just felt like it dragged, and it got to the point where I didn't care about the mystery. I didn't care about finding out who the actual killer was in the story. I just couldn't get on with this. So I DNF'd this, unfortunately. I might finish it at some point in the future. I might try it again. I don't know, because I don't like writing books off completely. But yeah, it just wasn't working for me at the moment, and I'm very disappointed because this was also one of my 5-star predictions, but it is what it is. Alright, so moving on now to all the books that I did finish and gave ratings to. So we'll start with my lowest rated book, which was Romanov by Nadine Brandes. I gave this book 3 stars. This is an Anastasia Romanov retelling. And I've heard of the Romanovs, this Russian imperial royal family that had been around for hundreds of years. And this is set in let's have a look. It's the very early 1900s, 1918, so literally just after World War One. And it's set during the last few months of Anastasia Romanov's life. She was assassinated along with her family by the Bolsheviks. So this kind of follows that story, but it's got a magical twist to it. And I thought that was really, really cool. It's not an amazing book. It didn't blow my mind, and it was quite predictable, but I still really enjoyed it. I love the romance aspect. So Anastasia ends up falling in love with one of the Bolshevik guards called Zash. And I just thought that was really cool. You know, it's kind of like love on opposing sides, a bit like Romeo and Juliet. So I really, really liked that, and I liked their interactions with each other, and I also liked the relationship between Anastasia and her younger brother Alexei, and I found their story really sad, actually. And one of the things that this book caused me to do a lot was to Google. I ended up Googling a lot about the Romanov family and about what happened to them and the events leading up to that. And it was really interesting, actually, because you could actually tell that the author had really done her research and had really, she'd been as true to the real Anastasia as possible, while also, playing into the fact that maybe Anastasia hadn't been assassinated and maybe she had been alive after the whole time there was this conspiracy going around that Anastasia had survived. So it kind of plays on that as well. It was a lovely, fun, young adult fantasy, and I would really recommend it if you want something a little bit different and just something that will help you pass the time quite easily, because this was a very easy book to read. So moving on to some 4-star reads, and we have got Photographic Presidents. So this was an ARC copy that I had got back in November, and I finally got around to reading it. And this book was really interesting, actually, and it was more interesting than I originally thought it was going to be. I just kind of requested it on a bit of a whim. I am very interested in photography. It was something that I studied in university for 3 years, but I wanted to learn more on the history side of photography, and this book actually gave me more historic information about photography and the process than I thought it would. So that was really cool, but this book just kind of talks about the president and photography and the relationship that the president has with photography and vice versa, how photography has kind of influenced presidents over time, and how that influence that the president had over photography also kind of influenced people's relationship with photography, because as soon as photography kind of emerged, like one of the first things that was photographed in America was a painting of George Washington, and that photograph then became like, you know, mainstream, as we would call it, and that kind of influenced people's ideas of what photography was and what it could do, and people suddenly wanted to take photographs, and it's the same when portable photography came out, you know, like the mini compact cameras, and it was so much easier for journalists to photograph presidents, and because of that people were, you know, starting to take snapshots of their life and things like that. So that was really, really interesting. But I also learned a lot of really cool things about certain presidents as well that I didn't know about, and that's probably because I'm a bit ignorant. Like, I don't really... it's only recently that I've become more interested in American politics. Like, it never really interested me before, but I actually learned some things about John Quincy Adams, and the fact that he kind of fell asleep a lot during his daguerreotypes, which I thought was quite funny, and also that William McKinley was like the first president to appear in a motion picture and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. And then this book does kind of finish up with Barack Obama and his relationship with photography, because obviously he was president during the time when social media was on the rise, and the White House opened up like a Flickr account, and you could kind of see day-to-day goings on in the White House, like via the Flickr account in real time. And yeah, it was a really, really interesting study, and I highly recommend it if you are interested in photography, if you are interested in American politics. Yeah, like I really, really enjoyed this, and I want more. I want to know more. So I'll probably be seeking out some more of this author stuff in the future. But yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. My next 4-star read was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. Now, this was one of my 5-star predictions. And unfortunately, I didn't love it. Like, I loved it. But for a book to be 5 stars, I have to love it. And this one just didn't quite hit that mark for me. But I still really, really adored this book. This is Romeo and Juliet retelling set in Shanghai, China in the 1920s, and it has this fantasy aspect to it where there is a monster prowling the streets of Shanghai, and it's kind of infecting people and making people go mad to the point that they claw out their own throats and then die. Like, it's pretty fatal. And this book actually really struck me because it's very reminiscent of the world that we are living in right now, because this book, you know, it has this disease ravaging the city of Shanghai, and there's this vaccine that's being rolled out, and, you know, there are people wanting the vaccine, there are people protesting against the vaccine, so it kind of reminds me of everything that's happening in the world right now, which is scary. But I really, really liked the characters in this book. I loved Juliet with all of my heart. She is such a badass bitch, and I want to be her friend. Like, I love how strong-willed and independent she is, but I also love that you get to see her vulnerable sides and you get to see her flaws. And it's the same with Roma. I thought he was a really well fleshed out character, and I loved the tension between Juliet and Roma. humor, and the kind of like will they, won't they scenario playing out. There isn't a lot of romance in this book, which kind of made it more exciting because you're kind of waiting for that moment to happen. But yeah, like I really enjoyed this. I loved how it ended as well. It ended on a real cliffhanger, so I really can't wait to read the second book, which I know is coming out soon at some point this year. But yeah, this was a very solid fantasy, a really interesting take on Romeo and Juliet. I loved the whole Chinese setting. I loved the inclusion of, you know, the Chinese culture, and the atmosphere of Shanghai, and like, you know, the gangs that were around in that time. And Chloe Gong has definitely done her research, because again, this is one of those books where I ended up Googling quite a lot to do with Shanghai in that time period, and the politics surrounding it. Yeah, so I don't know what else to say about it, but I would really encourage people to pick this up if you haven't, because it's just a very unique kind of fantasy, a very different spin on Romeo and Juliet, and it's just a fantastic book. The writing is amazing. I love it. Okay guys, so I'm going to move on now to the books that I rated 5 stars, and we have 3 of them. And one of the first ones is Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. So this one is, it's kind of like part memoir. I wouldn't say it's self-help, but it's kind of got little aspects to it that are self-help. But this is just Matt Haig talking about his experience with depression, and it kind of starts with the moment when he considered committing suicide and how he got through that, basically, and the things that keep him going. But it also includes bits from people online and stuff about the things that keep them going day to day, which I thought was really nice. I mean, I've started annotating my books this month, and there's just loads of stuff that really stood out to me. And this was a very quick read, actually. I read this in a couple of hours. And this is a book that I felt like I really needed at the time, because obviously you guys know I have been having a bit of a hard time with my brain, with my mental health. So this book was kind of the pick-me-up that I didn't know I needed. Well, I kind of knew I needed it. I just haven't got around to reading it until now. But I'm so glad that I did, because yeah, like there was a lot that really resonated with me in this book, a lot of things that I could really relate to and understand. There was also some things in it that I didn't really understand, but hearing it from this first person account, it kind of made me want to understand, or made me want to read into it a little bit more. I do really like Matt Haig's books. I do think, you know, he has a lot of really important and good points to make and to say. And I do have his other book, Notes on a Nervous Planet, which is very similar. So hopefully I can get around to that soon. But I just really loved this book, and it really helped me, so I can't recommend this one highly enough. Next we have Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, and I finished this the other day, and this book is a mind fuck. Oh my gosh. This one was definitely not what I was expecting it to be, which is good, because I don't like books. I mean, I like books that are predictable, but when it comes to sci-fi, if the book can shock me and just take me on an adventure I was not expecting to go on, then it's won me over. This book won me over instantly. Like, as soon as I started reading it, I was in love. I love the writing. There's just something so simplistic about the writing, but it is so effective, and it is so well done and so well paced, and I was just having the time of my life reading this. So this is about this guy called Jason, and one night he goes to the pub he tells his wife that he's going to go to the pub and just have one drink with his friend and then he'll be back for dinner. But then when he's on his way home, he ends up getting kidnapped, and he wakes up and there are people that know him, but he doesn't know them, and they're asking him like, what was it like, Jason? What happened to you, Jason? How do you feel? And he is really, really confused. And then he learns that he's woken up in a world that is completely different to his own, where he's not married to his wife and he doesn't have a son. And he is, you know, the rich and successful scientist that he wanted to be in his previous life. And he has created something that will really fuck shit up, basically. But what actually happened, I was not expecting, but it was really interesting. I was so invested in the story and I was rooting for him the whole time. It was frustrating, it was tense, it was exciting, it was just mind-blowing. I don't really know how to articulate how I feel about this book, because there was just so much going on and I can't talk about it without spoiling it for you. But please, if you haven't read this book, do so. You are not going to be disappointed. It is going to take you on an adventure that you will not expect to go on, and I guarantee you are going to love it. Alright, so the last book that I read and rated 5 stars was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, and this is probably my favourite book of the entire month. It was the first book that I read in May. I read it for the Buzzwordathon, and I'm so glad that I finally got around to this one. Everyone has been saying that this is Riley Sager's best book, and I've only read one other book by Riley Sager, but this one was definitely one of the best books that I have read so far this year. It was phenomenal. It was everything that I needed and more. I have been in a very big kind of spooky ghost story mood recently, and this book just ticked all of the boxes for me in terms of spookiness and adventure. I loved it so much. So we are following a woman called Maggie who inherits her parents' old house, which was dubbed the House of Horrors. Her dad wrote a book about the House of Horrors, about their experience there. So she's kind of known, you know, as the girl from the book, and that book has kind of followed her whole life, and people, you know, have wanted to know what actually happened in the House of Horrors. But Maggie's not really sure what happened herself because she was only a kid. And let me tell you now, the plot twist at the end of this book, I did not see coming, and it knocked me for 6. I loved it. But the best thing about this book is the atmosphere. This book gave me chills. The stuff that was happening, or was supposedly happening, in the House of Horrors, from the father's point of view and also from Maggie's point of view in the present, was just like, wow. Like, this is probably one of the best interpretations of a haunted house story that I have read in a long time. It definitely made me a bit paranoid. It definitely made me want to sleep with the lights on. It definitely had that really creepy, ghostly element to it that I just love in books like this. And yeah, like, it was just so good. So if you want a really good ghost story, this one will definitely give you everything that you are looking for. I hope so anyway. I don't want to be wrong about that, but I really enjoyed it personally, and this is, like I said, my favourite book of May, probably one of my favourite books of the entire year, and I might have to read this again at Halloween because it was just everything I wanted and more. Alright guys, so those are all of the books that I read in May. I will just quickly mention this chunky bad boy that you have seen pop up in most of my wrap-up videos this year. I did do a bit of a read-along with some people on Instagram, reading The Return of Sherlock Holmes, another short story collection, but obviously I didn't finish that. I am planning to finish those at some point. I'm not really sure when, but, you know, I will get to it. I'm, you know, quite a way into this book now, and I am still really enjoying my time going through the Sherlock Holmes stories again, and just getting involved in all of the murder mysteries that they go on. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned in today's video and what you thought of them, whether you liked them or not, or whether you're going to pick them up now that you've heard my reviews on them. I would love to hear your opinions as always. Please leave a cheeky thumbs up if you like this video, and please subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos from me in the future, and I will see you all in my next video very soon. Bye guys.